You're standing in a line. Someone ahead of you is describing a surgery. The details, the stitches, the blood, it has nothing to do with you. You feel no pain, you are in no danger, and yet the room begins to narrow. Your ears fill with a soft ringing, a cold sweat climbs the back of your neck, and the floor seems to tilt a few degrees toward you. Seconds before you go down, your body has already made a decision you never made. You've been told this is a weakness, a glitch, a fragile nervous system doing something foolish, the kind of thing that happens to people who supposedly can't handle the sight of blood. But if it were truly a flaw, evolution would have deleted it long ago. Faulty wiring that drops you helpless in front of danger does not survive millions of years. It gets selected out, quietly, on every continent, in every culture, in bodies that otherwise work beautifully. And to understand why, you have to look at what your body is actually doing in that half second before the lights go out. It's following an ancient set of instructions, and the last of those instructions is the strangest one your species still carries. Start with what's happening under the skin. When most people feel fear, the body floods with adrenaline. Heart rate climbs, blood pressure rises, the muscles load with fuel. This is the fight or flight response, and it is built to keep you upright and ready to move. Fainting at the sight of blood does the opposite. For a moment, yes, your heart speeds up, but then a nerve called the vagus takes over. It's a long, wandering nerve that runs from your brainstem down into your chest and your gut. And when it fires here, it slams the brakes. Your heart rate crashes, your blood vessels widen, and your blood pressure falls off a cliff. Not enough blood reaches your brain, and your brain, starved for a few seconds, simply switches you off. Doctors call this vasovagal syncope. Syncope is just the medical word for a faint, and the specific version triggered by blood and injury is common enough to have earned its own name, the blood injection injury response. Here is where it stops making sense. In the 1980s and 90s, a Swedish clinical psychologist named Lars-Göran Öst studied thousands of people with intense fears. He noticed that the fear of blood behaved unlike any other fear he had ever measured. Every other phobia, whether spiders or heights or open spaces, produced one clean pattern. Arousal that went up and stayed up. The body braced, and it held. Blood was different. Blood produced two phases, a brief rise and then a deep, sudden fall. Öst called it the diphasic response, meaning two phases, and it appeared to belong almost entirely to this one trigger. Think about what that means. Your body has a special, dedicated program for the sight of blood, not the generic alarm it runs for every other threat in the world, a separate one. It is also the only common fear that can take your consciousness away entirely. A spider will not make you black out. A cliff edge will not drop you where you stand. Blood can, and it does it on purpose, with a mechanism built for exactly this, and almost nothing else. Why would you evolve a custom response whose finale is collapse? The next clue is who faints. Öst found something that should not be true of a random malfunction. The blood injury response runs in families. In his data, a large share of people with a severe reaction had a close relative with the same reaction. Something written that consistently into a family line is not the accident of one nervous afternoon. It reads like a trait, something inherited, something kept. It also follows a pattern by age and by sex. It appears more often in women than in men, and it tends to show up early, often in childhood or the teenage years, long before most people have ever seen a serious wound. A random error would scatter. It would strike anyone, anytime, with no logic to it. This doesn't scatter, it clusters. And when a trait clusters like that, heritable, patterned, arriving before experience could teach it, biologists stop asking one question and start asking another. Not what broke, but what this was for. And the answer to that isn't in the human body at all. Subscribe. Because to find it, you have to leave your own species for a moment and watch what every cornered animal does when death gets close. There is a behavior that runs through the entire animal kingdom, from insects to reptiles to mammals. When a creature is caught, cornered, with no way to fight and no way to run, its body sometimes does the last available thing. It goes completely still, limp, frozen. It plays dead. Biologists call this tonic immobility. The psychologist Gordon Gallup spent years studying it, especially in prey animals, and he showed it is not surrender. It is a strategy. Many predators are triggered by movement, and many will not touch something that already appears dead and possibly diseased. A motionless body is a body a predator may pass over. Stillness at the very last moment can be the line between being eaten and being ignored. It's why an opossum seized by a predator goes limp and slack-jawed. Playing possum is not a figure of speech. It is a reflex, one the animal cannot choose and cannot stop. Playing dead is one of the oldest survival tools life has ever invented. It sits at the very bottom of the toolbox, beneath fight, beneath flight. The move a body makes when nothing else is left. Now hold that image beside a fainting human. The heart slows, the muscles go slack, the body drops, silent and still, at the sight of blood and injury. From the outside, a person who has fainted looks like exactly one thing: a body that is no longer a threat and no longer worth attacking. You may not have a switch that malfunctions. You may have a switch that plays dead. The psychiatrist H. Stefan Bracher took this idea and mapped it onto human fear. He argued that your defenses are not a single response, but a sequence, running from the first hint of trouble all the way to the final extreme. He described 5 stages: freeze, to assess the threat; flight, to escape it; fight, when cornered; fright, a deeper paralysis; and at the very end, faint. Fainting, in this view, is not the system failing. It is the system reaching its last option. The move a body makes when its owner is helpless and the blood, its own or someone else's, is already spilling. Which raises the darkest version of the question. When in the human past would collapsing at the sight of blood actually help you live? There are 2 leading answers, and neither one is comfortable. The first is about violence. For most of human prehistory, the greatest danger to a person was often other people. Raids, ambushes, one group falling on another in the dark. In that world, the ones who survived an attack were not always the ones who fought back. Sometimes they were the ones who dropped, went still, and were taken for already dead. A raider steps over a limp body. He does not waste a blade on the fallen, especially for those least able to fight. The young, the small, going down might have been the only way through. It is a grim inheritance to consider. Your faint may come from ancestors who lived through a massacre by looking like they hadn't. The second answer is about the wound itself. When blood pressure drops, bleeding slows. A body that faints from a serious injury loses less blood in those first critical minutes than a body that stays upright and pumping at full pressure. Collapse, seen this way, is a kind of emergency valve. It buys time. It holds blood in. It gives a torn body a better chance to clot, to slow the loss, to survive the first few minutes long enough for the rest to matter. A faint, in that light, is not the moment your body quit. It is the moment it triaged you. And now look back at who faints most. Not the largest, strongest bodies built to fight, but more often the young, the small, the ones an ancient attacker would have overpowered first. The people for whom going still would have paid off the most are the very people whose bodies still do it most readily today. That is not what a random defect looks like. That is what a fingerprint looks like. Notice what both explanations share. In each one, the feint is not the body giving up. It is the body placing a bet. A last automatic wager made by machinery far older than your name, tuned for a world far more dangerous than the one you're standing in. And here is the honest part. Scientists still argue over which explanation is right. The mystery is not fully solved. But that uncertainty is the whole point, which brings you back to the line. There is no raider here, no blade, no wound bleeding out on the ground. The person ahead of you is only talking, and the worst thing that can happen is that you sit down and feel a little foolish. Your conscious mind knows all of this perfectly well, but the switch doesn't. The switch was installed long before hospitals and waiting rooms and polite conversation. It cannot tell the difference between a story about surgery and a genuine threat to your life, because for almost all of the time your body was being shaped, that difference did not exist. The sight of blood meant something had gone terribly wrong, and the safest thing a helpless body could do was vanish. So it still runs the program. It still reaches for the oldest instruction in the book. It still, in that half second, chooses to play dead, for a danger that ended thousands of years ago. So here is the question to sit with tonight. If your body still plays dead at the sight of blood, what else is it quietly defending you from? Threats that disappeared long before you were ever born. Leave your answer in the comments. You're standing in a line and your body has just quietly decided to save your life from nothing at all.